How are you?
Yeah, alright.
Have you heard me tell them how much I love the Anglicans? I was telling them, gentlemen, how much I love the Anglicans. Not as they are now, but in principle.
The Messiah. Have you seen it?
No, it was something else. It was this idea of the Anglican Church that it could become the great national church, which kind of promoted and imposed Anglican Christianity, not Catholic Christianity, Anglican Christianity on the whole of England. See, it shows out. I'm just telling you, I'm not just for the Catholics. Well, I am really, but.
Well, no, it's an interesting one because it only came about last night when I was listening to someone else.
All right, okay.
And so you put that on your thing.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, the crucifix, right?
Yeah. Have you ever heard anyone kind of wonder about it?
Oh yeah, loads do. Yeah, people say, "Why have you got that? It's idolatry."
Oh no, not for that reason. I mean, the fact that they show him on a cross. Because if you look at the one that you've got there,
yeah,
you notice how they've made. If you look at the size of him,
yeah,
and say a human's about that size,
yeah.
Now, how would you get some Roman soldiers to get that vertical?
Poor old pagan.
Oh,
that big?
What they do, they first would nail him on the cross on the ground.
Yeah.
And then several of them would lift the cross up, and it would go into a hole already made for the cross to fall into.
Yeah, so then that one, because they made the bottom square and made it so thick,
Yeah.
you'd have your soldiers, by designing it that way, you're giving the soldiers like a lot more problems than if you went by what the Bible says.
Oh, because what I was saying is they'd make a hole of the right shape to just drop, so it would just drop in. Of course, the poor man's body would go lurch forward, ripping the hands and the feet.
Yeah.
But that's how it'd go in. Go on. What's the Bible say? You're saying to?
No, because the Greek word, the Greek
Stauros.
Word, Stauros. Okay. And then,
steak.
Yeah, and then crucified is Stauros something. So they I know I've just read through it what they were saying about it. What they said is that the crucifix is actually that's a Latin word because you don't have the term crucifix in Greek. So when you look at the way the Greeks say they use the pole, what I've noticed is that you go to every single translation, it always says cross. So obviously the idea to put cross in the translation, that's something which is fixed, that every translator has decided. But here's the problem. When I looked at their evidence for saying why it's a cross, it makes sense what they were saying.
Doesn't Jesus say in the Gospels, take up your cross and follow me?
Oh no, it's always Stauros. I looked through every single one is Stauros.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Right, carry on.
So and crucified is always Stauro whatever.
Okay.
So the fact that it's a pole. So the evidence they were given for the cross was that the term was used in some literature. So I thought, okay, if we go with literature and the fact that they were saying in the Greek sometimes they use a T shape in the letter, and so they got evidence that way. But I actually thought about it and realised, but there's one big problem here. So you could have all the literature on your side, and etc. But the thing which is not on the side of a cross is actually the practicality. Because if you got some Roman soldiers and told them, okay, this guy, you've got to nail him up and stick a pole in that hole. Now, okay, so they got like 100 prisoners to do like in a few days or whatever. So they get the pole along, they put them on, tie the arm, which is usually what you do, and then you put one nail for 2 hands, which is economical because you're using one nail. Now imagine they've been doing that for a while, and suddenly some, I don't know, a priest comes along or some religious and says, oh no, we want to make it so that we can have it as a cross instead, because it's a religious symbol. And if you told that to the soldiers, they say, get away from it, because now, rather than having one pole, laying the prisoner on it and their hands up and down, putting one nail through both hands and feet, now you've got to get a pole get another pole,
Yeah.
tie it around so that it's a cross shape, and you've got to tie it and use all this rope, because if you don't use enough rope, then the cross will wobble.
Well, you don't necessarily have to use rope. You could actually have it as a kind of simple joint.
Yeah, but
If it's made beforehand, it just slots together maybe.
oh no, but that's engineering. No,
Oh, you just gouge out the width of the
that's
crossbeam.
too long. That's the thing. So cut a tree, you just axe two ends of it,
Yeah.
and then you just put the prism on it, and then you just nail it.
Well, it's quicker. I agree with that.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So if it really was a cross, what they're effectively doing is they're more than doubling the work of the soldiers. And do you really think some soldiers who know that all they want to do is get the guy up on the thing and for him to hang on it? That's what you care about. So why would they go to all the trouble of like more than doubling the work of the soldiers just so they can have their arms stretched out?
Okay.
It's a story. It's not esoterical. It's not literal.
I find what you're saying really interesting. I actually don't have a problem with them like taking the extra effort to get another nail and make a joint, like I said, and nailing both hands separately. That is not my problem. What is interesting to me, what's interesting in what you say is this use of the Greek Stauros and the word cross not being there. So and if it's in secondary literature though, for many churches, that would be okay for us Catholics, wouldn't it? You know what we're like. We're not pure Bible only people. So if it's purely in other literature, that's fine by me. But what I want to do is to see if I can find anything which actually, gives us reason to believe from the text of the New Testament that it was a cross. I take what you're saying, so you've got my interest engaged now. It's got me interested.
Well, no, because what I did, that's why I did that before. So like last night I went through and looked up cross, and so each one I went to the Greek, and it was Stauros all the way.
Okay.
And then, like I said, crucified, the Stauro, whatever, that was always the term for crucifying. So what I'm thinking is that, you know how sometimes I don't know if you remember before when I told you about the Lucifer one, where in Isaiah 14,
right,
it says how they're fallen.
Day star, son of dawn.
And the fact that they use the term Lucifer, but that's got nothing to do with what the Hebrew says.
Okay.
So the Lucifer.
The dodgy translations are what you're getting at here.
Well, no, but it's in the. I checked it. It's actually in the Vulgate.
Okay.
So if you go to the Latin will use Lucifer, but that's a Latin word. So that wasn't to be the translators. That was actually added back in time.
Okay.
By the Latin word.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that it's a similar thing that they seems to have happened with the cross one. So someone wanted to slide the cross in because it's a symbol. I'll
have to look up Stauros and its linked word for crucifixion. I just don't know because you're the first one that's raised this with me. I know that Jehovah's Witnesses believe.
Yeah, I saw it.
It's just a stake.
Yeah, they switched it in the.
And I think Enoch Powell actually, when he was translating the Greek New Testament. I think he was retranslating the Greek New Testament.
Okay.
Or he was writing a book about the New Testament when he's very old before he died. I don't think it was about the Stauros that he was actually talking about. It was something else. Anyway. Point is, these issues, because you've not come to me before, I've now had a chance to kind of look into that. So I'll try and remember to look into that, because that's interesting. But I think if there are documents, and we know that there's a general view that crucifixion was on a cross, right? Notwithstanding what's in the New Testament, and that's certainly a firm basis for saying Jesus was crucified in the traditional manner. So that would be enough for me, but I want to just look on the New Testament points you've said.
But this is the thing about it is that if you have crucifixion, but if you have loads of soldiers and they're bored and they've got time on their hands, and I can see how they could do that. But why? The thing I would wonder is why would you do it if it's loads of prisoners and the soldiers are a bit under pressure? I don't see any armoured commander that would get them to put the crossbar on, because that's just like a waste of time when you can get them up on the pole anyway.
It's actually not a big problem because Pilate decided Jesus was going to be crucified because they.
Stauros.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to lapse. You have to forgive me. I've had donkey's years of this, this translation. So they could either have various crucifixes ready anyway, because they're going to periodically exert this punishment on people.
Yeah.
So use this punishment as a form, and they could. I really don't think that it's too much extra time to do the extra work that is involved in not just using a stake. And they had once they've got the cross together, when it comes to stretching out the victim on the cross, you just sit on his body, sit on his legs, sit on his arms, as you need to, moving around him, to then get the hand, hold it there, and hammer in the nail. And so I think it's going to take a bit of time, but they weren't actually up against the clock in the time of Jesus. They were going to get him up to Calvary at a certain time, about noon, and they kill him there, and he's hanging off for several hours. So they just have to get him nailed up there.
But here's another thing I just thought of. You know, if you're trying to put a crucifix into the ground, it's earth.
Yep.
So because earth isn't like stone, and you get a bit of it's a bit of softness in it. So then it's important that whatever you put in is as light as possible.
Let me stop you there. Here's what you do. You make the hole, as I explained. You've got the man crucified now, and you push up push him up on the cross beams, just at the edge of the hole. And when it gets vertical, the thing will drop straight into the hole. Excruciatingly painful. And then you get other bits of wood, like doorstop type shapes, or rocks, and you hammer them into the gaps that remain to hold that in position.
Yeah, but what I was trying to say though is that it's the fact that you've got the cross piece is actually extra weight, and it's causing another problem. Is that when you've got the cross piece, because you're pushing at an angle, you get rotation. Whereas if you don't have the cross piece, then the pole can spin it. It doesn't matter, because as long as you make the base circular, the angle of it is immaterial. But if you've got a cross piece on, and you're trying to push it, the unevenness of the cross piece can cause it to rotate as you're trying to put it in.
Yes.
That's extra work for the soldier.
Yes. If it's a kind of rectangular shape, it will go in and it'll have some movements because of the cross piece. But once you've put in the wooden wedges or the stones, that'll hold it in place.
Oh yeah, but I mean in the process of getting it up, the cross piece makes it harder.
Sure, if the cross piece is fixed firmly to the main piece, then once it's in and you secure it, it's all going to be straight and hold in one position.
Yeah, but that's...
There may be a little bit of rocking, which is painful, but you'll have to...
but what I mean is the extra weight, but the fact that it's a cross piece, so you get rotation. So if it rotates, the cross pieces can move around, and that's a lot harder to deal with. But it's just a straight hole.
Well, your job as a soldier to get the cross in the hole, firmed in place. If there's a bit of wobble, if there's some moving around, doesn't matter, because the victim is on there. He's the one who suffers.
Yeah, but I mean, the actual guy is in this position. The middle part of the pole out.
Right.
But it's the first piece is sticking out.
I see. What I was saying is, you actually have men. Say you could potentially have one either side of the cross piece, on each side of the cross piece, and one or two pushing the middle part up, the central part.
Yeah.
So they keep it facing where they want it to be facing as it slides into the hole and then is secured.
Do you know what? Can I just butt in?
Yeah. No, go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think I've heard I think what you're saying is correct in terms of like the word, in being a pole and not a crucifix. But I think maybe tradition tells us it's a cross or whatever. But my question is, what does it matter if it's a crucifix or a pole?
Yes.
Because ultimately, I would say it doesn't even matter if it's a crucifix or a pole, it's what it represents, right? And it represents Jesus dying. So my question would be, does it really matter, I guess? If
I
it's
think,
crucifix,
in fact, I think
it's
it's Enoch Powell, the guy I was mentioning before. I think he said, he thinks Jesus was stoned to death. I don't want to be too emphatic about that because it's my memory going back a long way. But even if Jesus was stoned to death, then that wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's the death,
what it represents,
the atoning
yeah.
death. But nonetheless, you're right to say that because we can get lost in all the details. Yeah. But yeah, it's still fascinating.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, don't get me wrong. It's an interesting discussion. And if we can be 100% accurate in terms of what it is, then I think that's great.
But what our friend has to do, because we're Catholics, you see, me and him, but these guys, these poor born-again Christians, I mean, we appeal to the tradition about it being an actual cross.
Yeah.
These poor fellas, if all they've got is the underlying Greek, which suggests a stake, poor them. They really are in trouble, because they have crosses without Jesus on, but they still have crosses, don't they?
Yeah, I know, but that's them. But I go to Sabbath church and we don't use crosses at all, so we don't have to.
Yeah, but you can see that these guys need help.
Yeah, well, that's
so you don't use what church do you go to?
No, it's just a Sabbath. It's not Adventist. It's related to the Adventist.
Okay. And you don't have crosses, right?
No.
You have poles.
Huh?
You have poles.
No. Because remember, it's Jesus' blood.
Right.
So it's the blood that's the symbol. So whatever he's put on, it goes through. Because it's the death, right? I was going to say.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the fact his blood was spilled.
Yeah. Wow. Yes, it's another thing for me to look up.
Yeah. But the reason I mention it is just the fact that you have these sort of things which are, like you said, tradition. But this is the thing about tradition is, we mentioned it before, is who validates the tradition and is it done properly?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And in fact, Catholicism would always say you must look into the past with the proper intellectual tools. You don't just kind of say, because we're Catholics and we have these views, that we don't investigate the past in a proper, rigorous way. But with us, the point about certain aspects of tradition is that we can say, without the kind of all the full details we would like to have, without the documentation we'd like to have, we can still speak of truth because the church has been given that power by Christ.
Yeah.
And this comes up most importantly when it comes to how we say, and you've probably heard me 10 times, if not 100, say to my born-again Christian friends, look, the Bible of 66 books, how do you know it's 66 books? Blah, 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 right? Only tradition, that is, only something outside of the documents can tell you what the documents should be that are in there. What of them are inspired? What are not? Given that there was never just 66 books hanging around 2,000 years ago, people just had to go and pick them up, bind them together and put a cover on them. No, there was dozens of different documents, hundreds of contenders. So somebody had to select, or no matter, even if you don't even think about that, if you think, right, I've got this now anyway, got it from Waterstones or whatever, I've still got to say to myself, how do I know it's true? How do I know these are the right numbers, 66 books? And I've got 73 in here, but just dealing with the 66. How do I know those 66 are valid? So something, we would say tradition. That is the idea handed down from the apostles that actually the 73 books we have are the right ones. That's why we say it's a truth. But we can't go and say, look, St. John wrote a list of the 73. St. Matthew copied it as well. He believed in that as well. We don't have that. We just have some writings which indicate this. But in the end, we have to say, look, our church set this out formally in councils, local councils in North Africa in the late 4th century. But it was validating what was held prior to that. And so this is how we know these things are true. And of course then we get the seal of it, because at the Council of Constance, in the 15th century, 1415, something like that. And then we get the Council of Trent in the 16th century.
What was the one in Constance? Where was it?
Council of Constance was the one that predated the Ecumenical Council, predating the Council of Trent.
Oh, but what was the location?
Somewhere in Italy, I think.
Alright.
But forgive me, my geography is a bit feeble. But Trent is the place where we get the infallible seal on the books that we have got. But even then, Trent doesn't rule out the possibility of other books being scripture, being inspired. I think they passed over in silence whether, I think the third book of Maccabees was inspired, but it's one I seem to remember.
Right.
So we don't speak of that. So it might be the case at a council 500 years from now, the church might say third Maccabees is inspired scripture. So what we're saying, what we've got is definitely inspired, but we've not ruled out everything else.
Right, but do you I don't know if this is something that Catholics would say, but do you think that God will be able to get his proper message to who he wants to, regardless of how many books? Would any Catholic go with that?
That's absolutely true, because take a practical example, Japan. There were a lot of conversions in medieval Japan to the Catholic faith. Jesuits went there, a lot of great missionary work, but then there was a change of attitude in the States. The emperor changed, or the regime took an adverse attitude, probably because they were concerned about foreign European powers coming in, spying and trying to weaken Japan. So they began a massive persecution of the church in the late 16th century, and Catholicism was effectively eradicated in Japan after being very strong. And we have a feast where we celebrate the crucifixion, actual crucifixion of what we call the Japanese martyrs in 1597. So it's wiped out in Japan, but when Japan reopens in 1867, some priests went there to try and re-establish the church. And there was one instance where a priest is in a church, I can't remember where it was in Japan, and a little old lady comes along and she says, "Excuse me, are you the father?" He says, "Yeah." And then she explains that she is part of a Catholic community that managed to survive for like 300 years in Japan without any priests, without the seven sacraments. So God can get his message when he wants. Go beyond that though, something it's very interesting. You know the film The Mutiny on the Bounty? The Mutiny on the Bounty, Captain Bligh, Fletcher Christian, Charles Lawton, and who's the guy who was in there, Gone with the Wind? Oh, the famous Hollywood actor. Anyway, it's obvious things escape my mind for some reason these days. Nonetheless, not Gary Cooper. Got a moustache.
Another one you mean, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Oh, I'll just not talk about it, so it'll come to my mind spontaneously. So, he's it's based on a true story, real mutiny in the late 18th century. And Fletcher Christian and a bunch of other men, they go to I think it's Tahiti, and they marry local women. Well, in fact, that's partly why they rebel, because they want to go back to local women. They don't want to go back to grubby old England and the rubbish life they have. Clark Gable, that's the one who plays Fletcher Christian. Mel Gibson plays him in the one where Anthony Hopkins played Captain Bligh in the 1980s. So I got that off my chest. And so they're unsilent, but then there's a dispute amongst the men, I think over the women. And so a lot of them kill each other.
So that's usual.
Eventually, one ends up on an island with some of the women. One or two end up, and there's this one guy. He's just an ordinary English sailor, low class, but there's a Bible, and he starts reading this Bible, but he doesn't really know anything about it. But he determines to teach the native women that are with him and the children that he's had, and the children of the other Englishmen who now gone, Christianity. And he says an angel appears to him and teaches him. And so the Tahitian people now, they've got a lot of Anglo-Saxon genes in them, and they're a Christian group.
Happened in the film?
No, this is after the film, you see. This is all what actually happened, because British Navy eventually found them. So this is that man's story. He was a drunk, everything, and he converted. He stopped the drinking, he became a real model fella. So there's an example of God bringing the faith to pagans through a man who was initially inadequate. There'll be other examples. We have example in North America, where when the Catholic missionaries arrived, they met people who said they already knew the gospel. Because there was a nun, I don't know if it was Mary of Agreda over here, who apparently bilocated, it seems, to the Americas. Well, she didn't know where she was going, but she spoke of people she met who seemed to be like the American Indians, and she taught them the gospel. So I totally believe, whether that's all true or not, it's not the point. I totally believe that God will get people to people of goodwill, so they can know the gospel at least before they die. So I agree with you on that. And it isn't necessarily the full Catholic gospel. In fact, the popes have said that there's a minimum that a person needs to know to be a Christian, but he doesn't have to know absolutely everything in the faith, because, you know, missionaries don't necessarily have the language of the other people to teach them everything, but they must get a basic. And so, yeah, it can be done miraculously.
Well, I suppose but this minimum, is it just based on what Jesus and the apostles said?
Oh, well, if the Pope's speaking, it'll be the minimum if we say that the Holy Trinity, salvation by faith in Christ, the crucifixion, or put that dispute aside. Crucifixion, Jesus dies for our sins, we may be redeemed. Those basics of the faith. We call the Trinity the basic of a faith because that's about the nature of God Himself. So that's I would rather call it a basic, a fundamental. So you get those fundamentals. You don't need to have heard of Mary, except you know he's got to have a mother. Seems had a human nature. But you don't need to know all the kind of stuff the church teaches. Because if you're kind of in a forest or in a desert, then you know there has to be. You have to kind of be shown the essence of this teaching, not be expected to have years of scholarship behind you.
Well, I mean, since Job managed it, and Abraham obviously, so they're the two that show that it is possible no matter where you are to get the proper teaching.
Like Abraham, taught by God directly, he spoke to by God directly.
Well, interesting thing, I don't know if you read in Job, you know at the end.
Oh, you said Job.
Yeah, well, I said Abraham as well, but with Job, Job actually says that, you know, when God came as a whirlwind, he said that's the first time he's seen it.
Okay.
So, and he actually says he heard about it before. Actually, I might have to see if I can get that quote so I don't miss it. Because that's one of the ones that because the way that Job said it, all of what he did wasn't based on like being directly told what to do. Because this way this Job replied to after God was speaking.
While you're looking for that, I'll just check something on my camera for a moment.
Big book, isn't it? Sorry, you shouldn't talk about it. I don't want to block the...
Just to check it's still working.
Yeah, so this
Still on.
So it's Job 42, 1, it says, Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. So verse 5 says, I've heard of thee by the hearing of ear. But this was the first time he'd actually met God. So everything
Yes.
he did before that, this animal
Just-
sacrifices,
Yes.
was just from what he heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perhaps, yeah. Perhaps he's a righteous pagan.
I don't know. No, but he obviously knew what to do. Because
Yeah.
the fact that God, because if he was doing paganism, you know.
Well, he might have rejected stuff like human sacrifice and thought, well, there's a God. I don't know much about him, but
worshipping the devil. How can you worship the devil? Is the point and still be righteous?
I don't know. But you said Job. If Job didn't know God,
No,
beforehand.
because remember at the beginning he was sacrificing for the 7 children.
Okay, right. So what are you saying? He knew God, but just hadn't seen him.
Well, it's what he said. He said he's heard. So he's heard of. He says, "I have heard of thee by the hearing of ear."
And what verse of 41?
Well, 42.
Oh, 42.
Yeah, he says that in verse 5.
Okay, verse 5. All right. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah. Now, I think pagans can be righteous, though. I think they can. I don't mean righteous in the technical sense of Christians, that your righteousness through the blood of Jesus, but
Yeah, no.
I mean that they can follow their conscience, reject the wicked things that paganism suggests that they do, and just aim to be effectively following the normal moral code that's in the Ten Commandments. You don't steal from your neighbour or people who you shouldn't steal from, and you don't kind of covet your neighbour's wife, and you are basically leading an honest, upright life. You can't be obviously achieve what you must achieve with Christianity, but you can just basically be prepared that way to receive the lights of God.
Yeah, but interesting because
But I take your point. I've read the Job sections now you're talking about.
yeah, so it's because that thing he says that offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. So he also offered burnt offerings, and I don't know if you've read through Job recently.
No.
There's a part where he says about when he's there's a song about it, about when his change comes. So he's talking about when he dies and gets resurrected.
Okay.
So he already knew about the resurrection, and they're saying that he knew about the something about the Son of God as well. You know, just an implication. But he also knew how to offer burnt offerings as well. So from what he just heard, he got quite a lot of knowledge to match what God was expecting. So I'm just saying that when you look at Job, so from what I can see, there's a way that God can get the right information to you.
Yes.
Even though you haven't like been a priest but you have to do the seeking, that's the thing. So he won't just force it on you. So I think it's because, like Abraham, Job was seeking God. So that's why he found it.
But we also must remember the pagan philosophers. They often sought God. Paul went to Athens, didn't he?
Yeah.
So they knew something.
Yeah. But anyway.
All right. So I guess I'll conclude now.
Yeah.
It's windy and chilly. All right. Take care, guys.
Yeah. All right.